Welcome. Clark County Council convened in a work session for an update on the 2025 Comprehensive Plan Multimodal Level of Service Standards. So Oliver and team, go right ahead.
Okay, good morning, Chair Marshall and councillors. For the record, Oliver Ojako. With me is Harrison, who will be giving the presentation, and we have Steve here too to answer questions that you may have. This is part of our update to the comprehensive plan, focusing on some component or one component of the transportation element. We are now required by state law to have a multi-modal level of standards, and we want to share that with council where we are. And as I said, this will become part of our housing transportation element, excuse me. And with that, I'll turn it over to Harrison. And as I said, we'll be here to answer your questions.
All right. Well, good morning, councilors. For the record, my name is Harrison Heasting. I'm a transportation planner with community planning. And so for this work session, we are coming in front of you today just to give you an update on kind of where we are with updating our transportation element and capital facilities plan as part of the larger comprehensive plan. And more specifically, we're here to discuss some new requirements, as Oliver mentioned, related to multimodal level service standards. And our hope for today is really to just check in with you and I guess kind of get or kind of check in before kind of moving forward with developing our project list with our capital facilities plan. Yeah, just checking in to make sure we're going in the right direction before this is in front of you for consideration and adoption for the larger comprehensive plan in the fall. Next slide, please. So for today's agenda, we'll provide you with an overview of some of the recent changes to the Growth Management Act that are related to transportation, as well as some of the new requirements that are outlined in the legislation for the transportation elements. The focus of today's discussion, as I said, will be on one requirement, which is for local jurisdictions to establish and apply multimodal level service standards. We'll review some of the current standards the county has and kind of what is missing to meet these new requirements. And then we will review a performance metric that's called level of traffic stress that we have been looking at as a way to meet these new requirements. And then lastly, we will review the recommended standards that our consultant team has kind of brought forward to us to adopt as part of the larger comprehensive plan update. Then we'll talk about kind of the potential outcomes from these new standards and also next steps in the process and how they will be applied along the way. Next slide, please. So by now, I'm sure you are very familiar with House Bill 1181, which was signed into law in 2023 with the purpose of improving the state's response to climate change through updates to the state's planning framework. This bill is more widely known for requiring us to add a climate element to our comprehensive plan, but it was very I guess, extensive in scope and also made some significant changes to what is required in transportation elements as well. I'll go over some of those new requirements in the transportation elements in the next slide, but I also just kind of wanted to touch over some very basic other changes in GMA that this bill made as well. So just as kind of a refresher, the GMA has 15 goals that are meant to guide the development of comprehensive plans, including one for transportation. The transportation goal was one of the few that was amended with the passage of House Bill 1181. The newer language that was added is underlined on that slide for reference. And so the goal now reads that we must encourage efficient multimodal transportation systems that will reduce greenhouse gas emissions and per capita VMT traveled and are based on regional priorities and coordinated with county and city comprehensive plans. And then additionally, House Bill 1181 also added some new definitions for terms in GMA. Some of the ones that are more applicable to the transportation element include definitions for active transportation facilities, environmental justice, and just what it means when we use the term transportation systems. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, two of the new definitions that were added into the law are for the terms active transportation and active transportation facilities. I didn't include word for word kind of definition on the slides, but I'll just kind of summarize it. Active transportation refers to all forms of pedestrian mobility, including walking or running, the use of mobility assistive devices such as wheelchair, bicycling and cycling, irrespective of the number of wheels, and the use of small personal devices such as foot scooter or skateboard. And this includes both traditional and electric assistive bicycles and devices. And then for active transportation facilities, it refers to any facility that is provided for the safety and mobility of active transportation users. So this could include, but is not limited to, trails, sidewalks, bike lanes, and shared use paths. And one of the reasons why this definition was added into kind of GMA is there are new requirements that we have to provide inventories of all of our local active transportation facilities. And throughout kind of the section that outlines some of the requirements for transportation elements, that we saw kind of this shift from just using kind of terminology that says bicycle and pedestrian to now saying active transportation to try to be more inclusive to some of those other travel modes that I mentioned within the definition. So like assistive devices and also kind of more human scaled modes of travel. And so another one of the changes that we saw was kind of this this shift to include more language about multimodal or needing to plan for multiple modes of transportation. So it's been within the GMA's definition, but previously we've only had level service standards to kind of measure traffic and vehicle movement. So by inserting multimodal, they kind of expanded it out for the need to kind of plan for additional modes. And so specifically in that section, they added that we needed to provide new standards for active transportation facilities. And again, kind of right below that, so kind of previously it did require us to forecast future traffic based off of the preferred land use alternative that kind of is selected as part of the comprehensive plan. And now they kind of shifted to this more kind of forecasting multimodal transportation demands. So again, shift from just auto-oriented to accounting for multiple modes for options for people. And these forecasts will kind of help inform the development of the transportation element. And then within that section that talks about forecasting and developing the transportation element, we saw a lot of added language and greater emphasis on safety. And I kind of just included an excerpt from kind of that section of some of the newer language that says, priority must be given to facilities with the greatest multimodal safety benefit to each category of roadway users. So that's just an example of kind of this greater kind of consideration for safety and other roadway users as well. And then we also saw some added language about, identifying needs to equitably meet future and current demand. So we saw kind of this equitable component added in kind of multiple places. And this kind of blends into some other requirements as kind of also listed. We're now required to include an ADA transition plan as part of the transportation element. And then lastly, there was some changes to the section that talks about concurrency by just adding some additional strategies that can be used for mitigation in kind of after the comp plan is kind of really adopted. And this is just kind of a high level overview of some of those changes. It's not an extensive list, but these are kind of what we think are most notable that we are addressing right now or will need to address in the future. And if you can go to the next slide. So,
Wilson, could I just pause you for a moment here?
Sure.
Could you elaborate a little bit on the level of service standards and what actually will be held to account for in the comprehensive plan? Because I look at this and think this is huge. And just having gone on that little tour, what it takes to really retrofit some of these places to have that connectivity. So what are we on the hook for here?
Yeah. So later in the presentation, I'll kind of explain exactly what level of service standards are. But in a nutshell, just to kind of help right now, these are kind of it's kind of the minimum level of service that that when it's adopted that we say is acceptable, and then it kind of helps us identify where improvements need to be made, and then also kind of what improvements can be made to kind of meet that minimum kind of threshold as well.
So do we define the level of service? Okay, got it.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks. I'll wait to hear more.
No problem. Great questions. So next slide. Oh, yeah. And then this is just kind of showing that even though there's a lot of different changes and new requirements, right now we're just kind of focused on establishing these new level service standards because, as I mentioned, these will be what we use to develop our kind of our 20-year capital facilities plan, which is our list of transportation projects that we are kind of funding and kind of committing to build over the next 20 years. So so that's kind of the next progression in the comp plan process. And so we're just trying to get ahead of this right now. Next slide. So so this is kind of that recap of kind of what exactly multimodal level of service standards are. And so in a sense, they are performance metrics that serve as a tool to assess the adequacy of our transportation system. So a tool that we can use to look at sidewalks, bike lanes, just general travel for people using their vehicle as well. As I mentioned, we kind of use these performance metrics to identify current and future transportation projects. As part of the comprehensive plan, we had put these projects in our capital facilities plan. And then kind of separately, kind of maybe more like secondary, these standards kind of really help us set community priorities and then also serve as kind of a metric to help us track progress over time to reaching those goals and priorities as well. So previously, kind of in GMA and in that legislation, these are kind of the standards that we're required to kind of list and have. So previously, we've only been required to have minimum level service standards for our locally owned arterials, and that's something that the county develops and establishes. And then we're also required to have standards for locally and regionally operated transit routes, which are established by CTRAN. And then with House Bill 1181, we now need to have standards for state-owned and operated transit routes, which are established by WashDOT, and then active transportation facilities, which are established by the county. I didn't list it on here, but the state does have their own standards for state highways. And so, and another requirement is that these standards are regionally coordinated. And so we've been meeting with WashDOT and CTRAN over the last couple months to check in with them, kind of tell them about kind of our approach and kind of information share, and then just to generally coordinate as well. And we kind of share out. We've been getting check-ins with some of the other local jurisdictions during our kind of RTAC meetings with RTC. So if you can go to the next slide. So I just wanted to kind of, before kind of going into some of the work that we've been doing to establish, or not establish, but kind of look at new active transportation level of service standards, I wanted to kind of briefly highlight some of our current level of service standards that we have for vehicle travel. And like I mentioned, this has kind of been the only ones that have been required from us before. And let me just see here. So I'm going to try to do my best to break it down. It's very technical, but in essence, we use performance metrics to measure kind of levels of congestion and then delay for people traveling in their vehicle, both kind of on roadway segments and at intersections. Kind of all of these standards are outlined in our transportation concurrency management system in our Title 40 code. And I've kind of provided the link if kind of you're interested in going in and kind of getting some more detail about those standards. But for roadway segments, we use this kind of metric called volume to capacity ratio. And our standards state that no roadway should exceed a ratio of 0.90 during peak travel periods. So essentially, this means that if a number of cars traveling along a given roadway exceeds 90% of the design capacity, we would consider that roadway deficient and flag it for improvements in the future. And then this most often means building out the roadway to add additional capacity to that road. And then for signalized intersections, the standards are that the delay for any vehicle should not exceed 2 cycle lengths or 240 seconds. And for unsignalized intersections, the standards are this LOSE at intersections that meet minimum requirements to justify adding a signal, and LOSD if the minimum requirements are not met. And we got this chart from this table from our consultant who kind of adds in that description. I know, again, it's very technical. So if you kind of look at this, just at the description, you can kind of see what those level of service like E and D mean kind of very vaguely. So right now we're not recommending making any changes to these current standards at this time. However, we might revisit these kind of once we see the results of our regional travel demand model after a preferred land use alternative is selected, but we're kind of leaning towards leaving it as it is right now. Okay, if you can go to the next slide. So for this slide, we wanted to talk about level of traffic stress, which is a metric that we've been looking at for kind of evaluating our active transportation facilities. It's been around for a while. It's not entirely a new concept. However, back in 2020, when WashDOT adopted their active transportation plan, they identified it as kind of the preferred kind of metric that they wanted to kind of use to evaluate active transportation facilities. They went through an extensive list of going through kind of the most recent tools and strategies that are kind of out there right now in the transportation field, and they landed on level of traffic stress as kind of this preferred metric. I'll kind of explain what that is a little bit, but back in, I think 2022, kind of the state passed RCW 47.04.035, which has kind of directed WashDOT to improve safety and mobility and accessibility on state highways by implementing complete street projects. And these projects are triggered when they start any project that costs more than $500,000 on any state routes. And WashDOT has committed to basically building facilities that are now LTS2 or better on state highways and population centers throughout the state. So that's kind of how they've used it. And we've also kind of seen it emerge. They've added it to some of their design manuals that we kind of use as kind of reference in a lot of our work. And we've also seen it kind of emerge as new kind of criteria in grant applications for are kind of active transportation projects that we submit to WashDOT for, or sorry, that we apply for through WashDOT, yeah, for grants. Yes. So in essence, kind of LTS, it's this grading system that is based on user comfort and perceived safety. So kind of that stress level. And yeah, it's really supposed to capture kind of, yeah, your experience walking or biking down a given roadway. And it's this grading level, it's 1 to 4, 1 being kind of the lowest stress and being the best, and 4 being kind of the worst or highest stress. And kind of this diagram right here kind of gives a description of, typically like the description of those type of facilities. So 1, kind of we see that an LTS 1 facility would be really suitable for all ages and ability. You would be able to kind of really send, or I guess like almost anyone would be able to go out unsupervised on those roadways. And then I think when we reached to 2, that's kind of a low stress, comfortable for most adults. And I think in WashDOT's active transportation plan, they've mentioned, you would be comfortable maybe sending out a child over the age of 8 unsupervised on those type of facilities. And then kind of 3 is kind of moderate stress, or really only tolerable for people who are enthusiastic or confident, and then really only for kind of adults for the most part. And then 4 would really be like a small portion of the population would feel comfortable on that facility. And so you would either have to be fairly highly confident, or be using that facility out of kind of sheer necessity. So kind of LTS kind of is this objective and quantitative assessment of the roadway, and it looks at a number of characteristics that affect safety, mobility, and access for active transportation use, including the current facilities on the roadway, traffic volumes, traffic speed, and the number of vehicle volumes as well. And there's this kind of general concept too, of kind of 4 types of cyclists. You kind of have these, they can fall within these kind of 4 levels of stress as well. You can have the strong and fearless, which represents about kind of 1% of the population, as I mentioned, or 1% of cyclists, and that they would use kind of 4 facilities. You have kind of this kind of enthused and confident group of folks who would probably be okay with using a 3 facility. But then there's this, the majority of kind of this population about, is it kind of, they characterize them as interested or concerned. And there's kind of this thought that it kind of encompasses about 50% of people or cyclists. And so by kind of working towards kind of lower stress facilities, you can capture kind of more people who might be interested but concerned over kind of their general safety or kind of comfort on roadways. And then lastly, you have this group of people, they're called, no way, no how. It's about 40%, regardless of any type of facility you kind of provide. They don't have any interest in really kind of using active modes to get around. So yeah, if you can go to the next slide. And this is kind of just a general kind of visualization of what those type of facilities kind of look like. And as I kind of also mentioned, they kind of provide, most people would feel comfortable with an LTS2, and then kind of everyone would feel comfortable in LTS1. And you can go to the next slide. So kind of late last year, WashDOT kind of released some interim guidance for how jurisdictions could address these new multimodal level of service standards. And their recommendations was to move forward with kind of an LTS2 for bicycle and pedestrian facilities, kind of across all place types. So we've hired a consultant to kind of help us with developing our capital facilities plan. And so we've kind of explored both WashDOT's interim guidance and as well as some other kind of multimodal kind of programs throughout the state that other jurisdictions have used. We've kind of really come back to really, using moving forward or considering moving forward with using LTS as kind of the performance metric that we would want to use with evaluating our roadways. We kind of, it's very simple, it's easy to understand, and it's transparent. It's very easy to visualize and give people kind of a map of kind of where those facilities are. It's a very flexible and adaptable kind of performance metric. And then, as I mentioned, it's kind of consistent with state and regional guidelines and standards. And so we've kind of worked through some scenarios, and kind of the recommended standard that we kind of are that have kind of come out of those conversations would be an LTS 2 or better within the urban growth area in the county, and then kind of looking at maybe an LTS 3 or better in rural areas outside of the UGA that are designated routes on RTC's regional active transportation network. And so to kind of go into that a little bit more, we kind of like understand as part of the comprehensive plan, we've provide these critical connections between communities in the county. And so we understand that folks want to be able to travel between the different cities and communities and have different options. But we have a large geography, we have a lot of constraints, so we don't think we would be able to provide an LTS2 facility, in many of the areas in kind of the rural parts of the county. And so this kind of thought process is by tying it to RTC's regional active transportation network. It's kind of a collaborative approach to kind of designate these routes. It can be very flexible, and really the jurisdictions are providing input on where they would like to have connections to for their residents. And so when we talk about the rural area, that might sound like a lot, but if you go to the next slide, I just wanted to kind of point out that for right now, I think in one of the most recent RTC board meetings, I think there was an update to some road atlases where this kind of regional active transportation network was adopted. And it doesn't show the urban growth areas, but I've highlighted the specific routes within that network that would fall outside of the UGA. And really, it's as of right now, it's just 72nd Avenue and 10th Avenue as well. And 72nd is currently on our capital facilities plan as a road that does need to be upgraded. So we would just look at what facilities could accommodate, better accommodate active transportation users on that corridor. If you can go to the next slide, please. Okay, and so I wanted to kind of walk through a couple of examples that we provided, some kind of handouts of some tables. I was kind of hoping this could be kind of more of a interactive exercise, so I can show you kind of really how easy this is to kind of understand and transparent, and kind of how we would use this to evaluate our roads. So I have a couple of local examples, and I've kind of pulled some of the road characteristics. And while you're looking at these tables for both bicycles and pedestrian facilities, these are kind of pulled from WashDOT's design manual, but you kind of work through it left to right, and it helps kind of first grade the facility, and then you can kind of use it to kind of help find what improvements or changes you can make to the roadway to get to the desired LTS that you want. So for this is an example, Northeast 40th Street. This is I think it functions as a major urban collector. It's located just north of SR 500, kind of bordering the city of Vancouver as well. And so the target speed is about 30 miles per hour. has one through travel lane in each direction. The traffic volume is about 3,200. There's no bike lane facilities, and there's kind of intermittent sidewalks throughout the corridor as well. So we kind of call this we'll just kind of characterize this as a no facility or a mixed traffic facility. And then kind of working through those tables, you'll find kind of the current LTS is 3 for both bikes and ped. Kind of working, if you were kind of to then work through the different columns of the different facility types, you will see that with the current existing conditions, you would be able to get to an LTS an LTS2 by providing, a 5-foot attached sidewalk, so curb tight, or for pedestrians, or a 5-foot bike lane for pedestrians as well. Also one thing that I would note out, so this is kind of a more of a residential street, these are, again, just examples of kind of not committing to saying that these are the type of facilities that we would put on these roadways. But this is kind of the exercise that we would look at as we look at each roadway throughout the process. And, we might determine, because of the context of this road, a bike lane doesn't really fit, the context. And so we might want to kind of keep it a shared use or a shared facility. And so we would look at other mechanisms of maybe either lowering the speed limit, which would be, not very costly. That could help achieve kind of the same kind of desired goal. And I think in this instance, the traffic is a little bit higher. But if it was just slightly, under, 3,000 trips, we would be able to just say like bump it from 30 miles per hour to 25 miles per hour. So that's just one local example. And I have 2 others, but I can go through those pretty quickly. So if you can go to the next slide.
In this case, it's just to bring it to.
Yes, so that's what would be needed to bring it to an LTS2, which is what we're kind of recommending. And so this is another example just north of 40th, again, kind of near Andreessen, where the kind of border of where the city of Vancouver is. The target speed is 40 miles per hour. It's 2 through lanes in each direction. There's about 9,700 kind of trips on that roadway. And there's right now you have an existing 5-foot bike lane, an existing mostly an attached sidewalk throughout the corridor. I think in this photo example, you can see where I think a new development came in and they added a detached sidewalk. But with its current conditions of those existing facilities, so even though there is a 5-foot bike lane, the speed is the speed and the number of kind of trips on that roadway kind of get it to that LTS4, which means it's still pretty high stress. And so kind of, again, moving through kind of those tables, kind of just looking at what improvements could be made with the current conditions. You would have to have a sidewalk that's separated. So again, just like that detached sidewalk that's kind of seen in kind of a little bit farther in the picture, or you would need a separated bike lane. So it's very kind of general when it says separated bike lane, and that could mean either a protected lane that has a buffer and vertical separation, or it could be something like a shared use path. And those are kind of some examples of what a separated bike lane would be like. And so if you can go to the next slide. And this one is just an example for Highway 99. So this is operates as a principal arterial, again, 40 miles per hour, 2 travel lanes in each direction, a lot higher travel volume, kind of volumes on that road. And in parts of Highway 99, there's some buffered bike lanes, and then there's just some conventional bike lanes. This picture doesn't capture the buffered bike lanes, but I think I pulled the data from a section that did have that kind of extra horizontal separation from the travel lane. And even with that extra, 2 to 3 feet of a buffer, kind of between this kind of the bike lane and the travel lane, it's still kind of high stress because of the volume and the speed. And so if we were to keep the speed kind of the same, some of the improvements that would be needed would be kind of a separated sidewalk or a separated bike lane. But again, there are kind of multiple levers that you can look at, like reducing speed, maybe helping to divert kind of traffic off of roadway to another one to help kind of get to that desired kind of level to get to an LTS2. So next slide. So kind of with our consultants, we've kind of looked at what our existing network looks. We've looked at our existing network and kind of what it looks like right now. And so this is just a breakdown between urban and rural, both for pedestrians and for bicyclists. And so, as I mentioned, we're kind of our main focus would be within the urban growth area. Let's see, if you go to the next slide. So with kind of a recommendation of an LTS2, kind of this kind of shares that a lot of the roadways within the unincorporated urban areas kind of don't meet the standards of an LTS2. And so we would have to work towards improving those roadways. So we see a large majority of them kind of falling within a 3 or 4. And so that is kind of the bulk of where we would kind of focus on those type of improvements. And if you can go to the next slide. And this is kind of just a visual kind of map of kind of where those facilities are located. I know it's kind of hard to read in this slide, but I think we provided a copy of just a draft memo from our consultants that do have this analysis kind of a little bit bigger if you kind of want to take a look at it later. But if you can, next slide. So as I mentioned, we've kind of explored kind of with our consultant what the potential outcomes could be with these new standards. And so they've let us know that we are going to be seeing new and possibly expanded projects in our capital facilities plan with walking and bicycle facilities. So there are a lot of our projects within the CFP, they do include elements for bike and ped facilities, but it would just be going back, evaluating them to see if they would achieve an LTS2. And I would say a lot of the more recent projects that the county has worked on or is working on is kind of heading in that direction. I know there's the example of the Northeast 99th extension project that I think completed sometime last year, and that was a roundabout corridor that has a shared use path on both sides of the roadway. And that's an example of a recent county project that would be an LTS2. I know there are some planned designs for 179th and some of the projects kind of in that area where there are plans shared use paths on that roadway, which would be a separated facility for both bikes and ped, and those would be LTS2 as well. So this is kind of something that the county has kind of already kind of naturally kind of shifted towards, but it would be kind of just cementing that kind of commitment. But they have mentioned that whenever you add additional elements to any project, you're going to see kind of moderate increase for project cost estimates. And then after kind of adopting these standards, we kind of foresee that we will need to kind of go back into Title 40 and look at updating our urban roadway design standards. So right now, our standards that are kind of shown in code, they don't necessarily kind of allot enough space for some of enough space that would be needed for separated facilities. So we've asked our consultant to go into our code, look at within the existing right-of-way that we ask for specific roadways, kind of where can we kind of allocate additional space to these different facilities. And so they're going to be working on kind of providing us with some draft concepts of kind of cross-section drawings and designs. But that is another process that we'll have to kind of undertake as part of these standards. And then they let us know that we're going to see kind of improved kind of systematic safety from lowering speeds and increasing physical space and separating road users. So yeah, whenever you lower the speeds and separate the space, you're going to have that added safety component. And then by really kind of working towards this standard of really planning for people, or planning for facilities that would accommodate most people, where they would feel most comfortable, we're kind of setting ourselves up to encouraging people to kind of have the options and make the choice to walk and bike more, which is going to help us with achieving some of our newer mandates to reduce VMT as well. And then also this kind of helps advance that vision that was kind of first established back in 2010 with the Bike and Pen Master Plan. And I just included an excerpt from that as well that just says the vision was really to improve county residents' health, enhance their quality of life, help improve and protect the county's natural resources, and be a source of pride for the community as well. So we're hoping that if we work towards it's a pretty high bar, but if we work towards that, it could be a source of pride for the community. So and I think I have one more slide left. So thank you for sticking with me. Kind of the next steps for us, this is just kind of to gauge with you all if this is the right direction that we're taking. And the next step for us would kind of move forward with looking at these different corridors and routes that we've kind of identified as maybe needing improvements, and start kind of working through them to see what improvements will be kind of added to a project list. So identifying locations, improvement types, and then developing planning level cost estimates for each project. And then kind of once we get our forecast of travel demands for our 2045 scenario, we'll look at incorporating projects that will kind of help meet future conditions. And kind of once we've kind of developed that draft list, we'll bring it forward for kind of review, and we'll kind of, I think there's time later in the process for the comp plan to kind of discuss financing and funding, and kind of I think there's an analysis that will be done through the capital facilities financial plan. And then at that point, once we've kind of seen the bigger picture of what this means, and we have the cost estimates, we are always able to revisit and adjust kind of the assumptions that we use, or the standards that we have set as well. So I guess kind of moving forward, this isn't like concrete set in stone. We have an opportunity to kind of adjust them if needed, if we find that that the cost is too much for the county to undertake in the plan. And then after kind of all of that, we'll kind of finalize our capital facilities plan project list. And then kind of after the comprehensive plan is updated, we will kind of go through the process of updating our traffic impact fees, which are calculated based off of the project costs within our CFP. And we have to do that within 6 months after adoption of the comprehensive plan. So those are our kind of next steps. But that is all that I have for you all this morning. So I know that was a lot of information, but we're here to answer any questions.
Before we dive into questions, I just, for the record, my name is Steve Gallup. I'm the Transportation Division Manager for Public Works. And I just want to say that there's been a lot of work, of course, has gone into this. And as far as I kind of more or less representing Public Works here, and we've been in partnership with planning to help come up with these multi-standards, and we are fully on board to get these standards into our design standards that we use for our road improvements and things, as well as, I don't want to speak for community development, but I know community development has also kind of been in on some of our meetings and are aware of these multimodal standards as far as development is concerned too. So just want to let you know that Public Works supports this and we're excited about it.
That's good to know. Well, thanks for this wealth of information. Councillor Fuentes, do you have any questions?
Well, first of all, thank you. This is a lot of information, very technical,
Mhm.
but thank you for putting in the work to do this analysis and hopefully a plan that we can execute in the future. My question is on page 16, existing level 15 or 16, I guess, either or. The under pedestrian and bicycle, the miles that are high LTS, level 3 and level 4 are, I imagine, in urban unincorporated Clark County, correct? So Salmon Creek, Philida, Orchards.
Yes. So, yeah, I think so. In this slide, just the sections that are highlighted. So this actually, we did just ask our consultants to look at our collectors and arterial roadways for this graph. Our kind of general assumption is for kind of local access residential neighborhoods, those roadways would really fall kind of naturally at a LTS2 because of the lower speeds and the lower volumes on those roadways. So these are kind of the roadways that are used a little bit more, that have the higher traffic volumes. And so, yes, those are sections are just within the UGA.
And my other question, Harris, is that this is going to cost time and money, right?
Mm.
So are you prioritizing the urban areas versus the rural areas, or what does that look like if in an ideal world we had the time and we'll have the time and you're fully funded? What does that look like?
Really great question. So with our recommendations, as we mentioned, we're setting that LTS2 standard for the urban areas, and then a very limited kind of approach for kind of specific routes within the rural areas. So yeah, the majority of the focus will be in the urban areas, because really that's where the land use context really kind of justifies those level of improvements. You have generators for active transportation users, and you just have the higher densities for them as well. And as part of this process, yeah, we're gonna, as noted on the screen, there's a lot of miles of road that are LTS 3 and 4. So we will have to go through a process of prioritizing which ones first. And so we kind of asked our consultant as well to kind of look through our comprehensive plan, look through our goals, and then kind of create this prioritization framework that we would use moving forward to prioritize projects. So that's kind of also the next step for us too, is kind of looking at how we're going to prioritize these projects.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a couple of questions. And so the overall goal is it not necessarily every road is going to be a level 2, but that will prioritize and look to routes that get people to the places that they want to go and get those up to the 2? Is that generally how it'll operate?
Yeah. That's a great question. So I think we've looked at our arterials and collectors, and I think those are really where we'll focus on making improvements to, because that's kind of the most direct routes in most cases for folks to travel. Now, our consultant has told us there are going to be times where we might not be able to accommodate the standards for every road user on a given roadway. And so we'll have to look at, say, if we can't accommodate on one roadway, is there maybe a parallel route that we can instead provide it, that would be, equally kind of efficient for someone or easy to use. And so I think there's going to be a lot of growing pains we'll have to work through, kind of how we prioritize that, and kind of work around. But yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
Kinda.
Okay.
And I imagine that you'll be working with the users as well, because I think they can provide you with some really good feedback on where they want to go and what makes it easier to get there
Yes.
or not.
And I will say, we do have our network that was established in our bike and ped master plan. It is pretty old, so maybe this kind of is a segue into, seeing if we can update that plan and get the community involved to provide additional input on some of those kind of important routes.
Right. And we have a very good committee
Yeah.
that can help you with all of that too.
And
I've seen them in action.
Yes, and BPAC, I've been providing them with updates on this, and they have definitely their ideas of routes they would like to prioritize as well.
Great. And I think, there's work and services, but then there's also park and recreational destinations too that I think are important to keep in mind.
Yes.
In terms of design standards and knowing that a lot of the focal area will be City of Vancouver's growth area, I wonder how this might sync up with the City of Vancouver's standards or what they're doing. If ultimately, we don't know when, some of this will be the City of Vancouver.
Thank you, Councillor. That's a good question. As Harrison indicated, all the other cities are going through this and also developing their own multimodal level of service. We will be coordinating with the cities as is necessary, and I'm glad that Public Works is on board. Some of this, as you will tell, will require redesigning. It could require some cost, and how we prioritize how to meet the level of service too, if that is the desired approach we want to take. So we'll be coordinating with the cities so that in the future, as we implement our own multimodal level of service, that there is some consistency, if you will, so that when they annex, it wouldn't be a big challenge in trying to retrofit. Some of the issues have been lack of sidewalks, even bike lanes and other things. We adopted a complete street standard, which the city also adopted. So there is consistency there. So as we move forward, I see a multimodal level of service correlating with the City of Vancouver.
Great. And, living in a rural area and actually observing some of the development that occurs on the edge, and you mentioned 179th, I think there's a lot of stress points related to that. And it's just how we develop and who pays for what and when they pay for it. So you can have more compact development right next to a very, a few acre parcel, and that the roads they're going out on, those developers aren't improving the whole length of the road that they may need to travel. And there's some serious concerns about, people have to walk in the street because there's otherwise there may be a ditch. There's just no place for them to be, let alone a bike. So the road actually is used. The roads become the multimodal venue. And we don't know, because just with that one picture that had the intermittent sidewalk, who knows when something may occur that would trigger someone paying for that additional sidewalk. And otherwise, I don't know, well, except for Public Works finding the money to do this. I think it's a flaw in just how we pay for things. I don't know. You're not going to be able to solve this, I think, Harrison. But I just toss it out there as a frustration that people are having as we've expanded and are putting more density in areas that aren't immediately and may not be for quite a while compatible with that density. It's a real challenge.
That's true. And I'm not going to put a burden on Public Works, but I think this will eventually in the future require us to revisit our road standards and what we require, and that will get us some opportunity to know who's building what and make that part of the requirement, because that is where you see a lot of gaps.
Right.
And folks not wanting to do any frontage improvement or delaying doing one project and leaving the rest not knowing when that will come. So you don't get that sidewalk, you don't get that frontage improvement, but it is something that we are going to be looking at as we move forward.
Would-
So
would-
that both our road standard and the design and other things will be in sync in terms of what the classification of an arterial may be. And I think Steve may add something if he wants.
Yeah, we have to start somewhere.
Yep.
So I think that's the important thing is to, we're starting with these standards. We're going to do the best we can to implement these standards. We're going to give full consideration to, all of our projects for bikes and peds, for active transportation. Perfect example is the project that we're doing this summer up there, the safety project we're doing in front of the Alki and Chinook School, Skyview schools up there on Bliss Road and Northwest 139th. That's an overlay project. It came time to do an overlay project there, preserve the road. So we're taking the opportunity to what we call repurpose the striping. So we're creating wider bike lanes, buffered bike lanes up there. And so, it's baby steps. And
Well, I don't bring up 179th to be discouraging. I'm glad we're even having this conversation and that everybody's on board.
yeah,
If we are looking at new road standards, what would that be within the context of this comp plan update or follow?
It will follow, Councillor, it will follow. It is
I think I knew the answer to that.
major project. It will follow.
Okay. And then just a thought I had as looking at that road and changing the speed limit, looked like a very straight road and you may change that sign, but if it's a very straight, if there may be other traffic calming strategies in association with changing the speed limit to make it actually work.
yeah. I think this kind of goes along with our neighborhood traffic management program
Yes.
that we just got done, we just passed and going to be working on. I think this goes right in line with that, with these multimodal standards.
So if you want direction from us, I would just say I like the direction that you're going. That level 2 seems like something to strive for. And I appreciate all the collaboration that's going on, especially looking with RTC and CTRAN. I think, all those components really need to overlap with each other. So I'm glad to see that happening. So thank you very much for your hard work. Did you have any direction you wanted to provide, Councilor?
No. Well, no, thank you again. And this is again a great presentation and a good vision for the future of our roadways. But I called you Harris earlier. Harrison, I apologize.
Thank you. It's okay.
Oh, and I'd just like to say, you're just hearing from 2 counselors. We don't have a quorum today. And so take that for what it's worth.
Thank you.
Thank you, councillors.
Okay, thank you very much. So this concludes our work session.